just in case.
That makes sense.
So it gives me, ladybugs and yellow jackets. Happy Friday. I hope it is sunny where you are. Welcome to this week's Author Reads. I am here today with Jeffrey Cook. I'm your host, Fairy Princess Lolly, and I am going to get, of course, our obligatory bumps out of the way. So if you're tuning in wherever you are from home, Facebook, YouTube, the platforms, hit the like and the subscribe button, share, and of course, remember that we will be taking questions from the audience as things progress here today. And also, all of the information is in the low bar. So if you're looking for links and whatnot, or information that you see appear on the screen and then maybe go away, all of that can be found down below, either during the show or after. So it is all there for your perusal. Jeffrey, you are today's author, and please introduce yourself to our viewers at home and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you write, where you come from, where you go.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much, Princess. I appreciate the introduction and you being nice enough to host me today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
As she said, I am Jeffrey Cook. I am an independent author living in Maple Valley, Washington, a little bit southeast of Seattle. I have been here for a little over a decade now, after spending most of my life bouncing around the country. Have lived all over the United States and Canada, and those travels tend to kind of influence my writing. Let's see, live here in lovely Maple Valley with my wife, our housemate, and our two fur babies, Milo and Pudding, who are taking a nap, so hopefully they won't decide they need to come say hi to everybody, or maybe, unfortunately, I don't know. The pit bull might be more interesting than me. I have 23 novels out now across a range of science fiction, fantasy, and a single nonfiction book aimed at authors who want to go into live sales. So I'll happily take questions on any of those. When there is not a virus running rampant through the country, I spend most of my weekends at conventions, working with Clockwork Dragon Books.
And what is Clockwork Dragon Books, if I can just...
Yep, absolutely. So Clockwork Dragon is a indie author cooperative. It is 4 of us plus our associated co-authors, such as my most prolific co-author, Catherine Perkins, who co-wrote most of what I will be reading from today. We work together to help market each other's books and basically have somebody who is not the author there saying, hey, I love these books, I've read these books, I would not be choosing to work with these people if I didn't enjoy what they wrote. That is myself, Lee French, Sechin Tower, Nikki McCormick, and then, like I said, some of us write with co-authors. Like I have a lot of books with Catherine Perkins. Lee writes regularly with Eric Court. We have 64 books out now between the 4 of us. So most weekends those are on the tables, and you can find absolutely everything at clockworkdragon.net. I think they'll have the websites and links and stuff available. All of us are science fiction fantasy authors, and then about little less than half of those 60-odd books are young adult across a big range. I mostly write mythology and history-based research nerdery. Lee does a lot of fantasy, urban fantasy. Sechin is a fantastic science fiction writer. Nikki's fantasy and steampunk. So kind of a big range, and a big part of where we started is the four of us talking and discovering all four of us have books with 16-year-old girls as the main characters, very diversity heavy and action adventure, not romance. So that kind of ties it together as far as the big four that we kind of market together.
Nice. That sounds like a really good spread of. I'm curious if you know the answer to this. How many books do you guys have betwixt the lot of you?
I believe we are at 64.
64. And
Yep.
Clockwork Dragon, is it clockworkdragon.com? That's
Clockworkdragon.net.
.net. Ooh,
Yep.
I may have put the wrong dot in the ticker. let me check that really fast. Although, yeah,
Sure.
no, I didn't. I got it right. Oh, look at that. I'm ahead of myself. I love it when I do that. So yes, that is now going there in the low bar, or in the ticker below, and also in the low bar if you guys want to go check that out. And so you have brought, well, gosh, I feel like we have so many things actually to go through today. We're going to have a packed hour. I'm super excited for it. So if you are watching and you stick around to the end, I'm going to put this out right now. Jeffrey will be hopping over onto the hedge on our Discord channel, and we will be doing an exclusive little after talk there, which I think has a very interesting topic. So stick around for that. And if you want the link to our Discord server, that is also in the low bar. You can just click your little expand arrow, or if you're on Facebook, all you have to do is just scroll down and read the description. So, so which books today you want to read from? Two different books, and one of them is Foul is Fair, and which is easy for me to remember because I'm very familiar with that book.
Yes.
Yes. And then the other one is?
So the other one is You're Not a Real Goth Until You Sack Rome.
It's very Seattle sounding.
Well, so there's a reason for that. And you will appreciate this since I know you have read Foul is Fair and are reading Street Fair.
Yes.
So You're Not a Real Goth Until You Sack Rome is the first book of the completed Gothcraft trilogy, which, just like Fairfolk, is set in Seattle. And the two series are actually shared world. So you will see cameos from Fairfolk in Goth of some of the older characters in their 20 years younger versions, because the two series about 20 years apart, with Gothcraft set in the 1990s.
That sounds super fun. Oh man, now I want to get those ones too. I have the entire Foul is Fair series, so, and I'm
as far as Gothcraft goes, I can make that happen because I know your preferences. In addition to the links, I do sign and ship books. Yes, so for people who like signed books, etc.
Yes, although these days we are very careful to wipe down everything that comes into the castle. So,
and everything that goes out of here goes out pre-sanitized.
But also there is the option of ebooks for you as well. So, I guess are we going to begin with the Goth or the Foul is Fair?
Let's go ahead and start with Foul is Fair, and then we will move to Goth, and then if there is time or requests or anything, I can potentially do a little more or do a birthday present for somebody in the audience.
Yes, I heard through the little rumor mill that we have a birthday person out there watching today. Well, except for that, I'm not sure they're actually a person, and I'm not sure they actually do the birthing. Maybe more like a hatching. Yes. Okay. So I shall turn the screen over to you and let you start with Foul is Fair. And I would like to just say to those of you in the audience, if you have questions as this goes along, please feel free to type them in the comments. And then when Jeffrey is done reading this excerpt, we will talk about it a little bit, and we can ask your questions at that time. That is, and I wish my coffee came in that size, actually. That looks perfect.
Well, so I am disabled, so that is my 2-quart mug is my lifesaver with ice water right now while I do readings and not needing to get up to refill things terribly often.
Fair, yes. Unlike my itty bitty, but exceedingly cool handmade mug. This is really like, I mean, I have 3 favorite handmade mugs, and this is one of them. So, okay, enough of the mug. Back to the book, and I shall turn the screen over to you, sir. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Okay, since I see we have had a couple of comments, I will do a brief introduction, I guess. So this is the first book of the 4-book Fairfolk Chronicles series. It is based on Celtic and Hawaiian mythology set in modern Seattle, mostly about 2016. It is about a 7th grade reading level, so readers who are on that levels, but we have fans as young as 8 years old, so it is content appropriate down to those ages, particularly so long as parents or whatever are good with LGBT content, the occasional smartass, things like that. The main character of the series is Megan O'Reilly. She is a 16-year-old Seattle girl with ADHD who, in the section I'm going to be reading, has recently discovered that she is half she, the Irish Fairfolk, is using that to become a bard. So just starting to learn to do magic via music and singing, is being introduced to things by her best friend, Lonnie Kahale, who it turns out is half Menehune, the Hawaiian Builder Fae, which is where a lot of the Hawaiian comes in. She has met the pixie Ashling, and Ashling's a pixie with torn wings, thus requiring the presence of Ashling's service crow, the Count. And Megan has not yet gotten why he's called the Count. And then just the night before, she met Cassia, a outspoken pansexual satiress, and they are bringing Megan into the fairy realm for the first time. Chapter 9, Into Fairy. Ashling's way to the nearest passage turned out to require a trip to Fremont Peak Park. The small group navigated the gravel paths that wound through the park, and then the crow and pixie led them out into the grass and through some of the shrubbery to a spot that would be hidden from the view of most of the casual passers-by. So, you did promise. Why is he called the Count? Megan asked, while Aisling was moving about the ground, amidst a ring of mushrooms mostly hidden under the brush and grass. Dressed in black with a widow's peak, Aisling began. How matters of hairstyle could be applied to a bird was technically a question that Megan could have asked, but she just stood and watched and listened as Aisling walked in a figure 8, still talking a mile a minute. And of course, my cousin Nessa has told him that it's a shame he's not named the Marquis, because he travels the far reaches and all, but considering his fondness for Monte Cristo sandwiches. Megan was seeing by now what Lonnie had meant about pixies, so she directed her next question to Lonnie. So, it's not dawn or dusk like before. Why am I seeing a pixie and not a butterfly? Oh, it'll start happening more and more. You know what Aisling really looks like. You've accepted that pixies exist, and you're starting to acknowledge the whole she-blood thing. My dad being a fairy lord who decided to leave his magic realm and come join a Seattle rock band for a few years, that little thing? Gee, when you put it that way, it almost sounds silly, Lonnie said, unable to entirely avoid smiling. You're starting to sound more like yourself, though. They glanced back to Aisling, who had stopped talking and stopped pacing. Okay, ready, she said, before looking to Megan. So, did you have any other questions? I like questions. I'll get back to you. So, how do we do this? Aisling was about to respond, but Lonnie interrupted. Just step into the ring, close your eyes, and then step out again. Well, she explained, raising her voice just a bit. Aisling attempted to answer anyway, with some directions that sounded to Megan like they might have been lifted piecemeal from the Hokey Pokey, the Macarena, and the Time Warp. Noticing no one being inclined to go through her dance, Aisling huffed, then stepped into the ring, followed by the Count. Both disappeared when they started to step, or in the Count's case, hop, out of the ring. Lonnie went next, demonstrating on a larger scale. As she stepped back out of the ring, she too disappeared. Megan took a deep breath, then stepped where Lonnie had been, careful to avoid the mushrooms. Then closed her eyes, released the breath, and stepped back out. A little surprised when she kicked something crunchy sounding that seemed to almost hook into her shoe. When she opened her eyes, the entire world had changed. The first thing she noticed were the colors. Everything was brighter, starting with the sunlight, especially in comparison to the gray skies of Seattle on October. The light made it no warmer, but just added to the golden sheen in the air. This brought out the color in the marigolds and golden columbines that peeked from the vibrant green grass amidst the chill. The golden haze of the air also matched the golden apples hanging within some of the dense expanse of trees. The apples that weren't red or yellow or green or mottled or pink. Megan noticed the second thing very quickly, because if she hadn't, she would have fallen right into the raspberry bush, rather than recover her balance. As it was, she barely managed to extricate her foot from the thicket it was ensnared in. The raspberry bushes, too, were filled with all varieties, red and black and purple and blue, and more golden. All of the fruit was large and ripe and glistening, even in the cold. Lonnie was waiting calmly by one of them, with the Count perched on one of her shoulders, and Aisling perched on the crow's neck. Megan turned at the sound of odd footsteps. She didn't blink thanks to the preview of the night before, dusk, but it was a better look this time. The woman behind her was still Cassia. The facial features were right. She was the right size, and she still had the Saxon Violins t-shirt. Now, however, the rest of her clothing was a distinctly more ancient Mediterranean style. She had loops of bronze-plated leather covering the top portion of her now fuzzy and hooved legs, while the Vespa helmet had become a bronze and ivory helm, with holes left for her impressive curling horns. The kittens were again full-sized adult leopards, one still wearing a leather helmet and aviator goggles, and the Vespa she'd been wheeling beside her had become a small chariot. The letter opener had likewise transformed, leaving Cassia with a straight bronze sword on one hip. The satirist grinned, striking a pose. "Time for showing off later. We have a lot of walking to do," Lonnie called. Cassia sighed. "Spoil sport." There was a grin, though, and she set to securing the chariot to the pair of leopards, though once the apparently tame cats were strapped in, Cassia just walked alongside it. As soon as everyone appeared ready, the Count lifted off Lonnie's shoulder and began weaving through the trees, doubling back often to make sure the others didn't lose him. For a while, Megan just marveled at the world around her. When there were sufficient breaks in the trees to see them, towering peaks that looked like they dwarfed the Cascades, and probably the Rockies as well, loomed in the distance. There was the occasional sound of birds. More disturbing, Megan was constantly feeling like she was being watched, and occasionally would swear she saw motion out of the corner of her eyes. Any time she turned her head, there was no sign of anyone but herself and her companions. The others weren't exactly relaxed, but they also weren't looking around every few seconds. So she did her best to convince herself it was her imagination, fueled by the haze of golden light, which was occasionally almost lens flare-esque. She therefore stared straight ahead, which for the moment was at Cassia. "Now, wait a minute," Megan said, after considering for a moment. "You've got the horns like the fawns in Etruscan and Roman art. But the outfit is Bronze Age Greece, and that," she pointed at the horse-like tail emerging from the armored skirt, "is an old-school Bronze Age satyr's tale. Mrs. Chang's Art History Thursday sophomore year had been way more fun for Megan than regular history." Well, I appreciate your checking out my butt, Megan. Satyrs and fawns have been mixed up for millennia. Yeah, but you can't actually be both at once. Don't tell me what I can't do, Cassia said good-naturedly. And I will set that aside, take any questions, comments, etc., and then I will get on to more reading.
Okay, so let me just take a peek here. We have some comments, but saying that Cassia is the best character, not that the listener is biased.
So I
let's
will
see.
Introduce that listener because she is important and near and dear to my heart.
All right.
So D&D Geek Girl is Sherry of Chaotic
Shout out.
Creations Cosplay. She has been a cosplayer with us since Jareth the Goblin King brought her over to the table, dragged her over to the table at Fairy Worlds a few years ago now. Shoved the book I was just reading from, Foulest Fair, into her hands and said, "You need to read this." She was kind of hesitant, but she really liked Shakespeare Goes Punk. So I get an email 2 weeks later asking for all these details about the character Cassia because she wants to start cosplaying her. Okay, Mythic Worlds, thank you, 4 years ago. And this is part of why she is near and dear to my heart. She keeps me in line. And pretty much since that time and her first couple of times showing up as Cassia from Fairfolk, she has been starting to work as my PA disability assistant and coming to about half of the cons per year with us to assist.
Wow. Well, that is awesome. That's a cool how you met story. I mean, just a coming together story. I really like that. And I did not know all of that. So, and I have learned something though from hearing you read. So I've spent a great deal of time asking Uncle Google how to pronounce this and how to pronounce that. But I apparently, Cassia is not one that I ever looked up, but was pronouncing wrong. I often do that where I will, the words I've been looking up are all the Gaelic ones that are pretty hard to pronounce. So I hope I've mostly got them right when I'm reading your story, but I have been saying Cassia, not Cassia. So
that's okay.
I can continue to do that. That's okay. That double S, I often, when I see that in words, I always pronounce that as a sh, as opposed to a s, like a extra long, elongated, which I guess in German it would be. Isn't there actually a letter of like SS and it's pronounced extra S-y?
There is, in her particular case, she is very, very Greek, and her name is short for Cassiopeia.
Well,
but she hates her long name, so she is Cassia.
Well, I have not got to the part where she hates her long name yet. So
that really hasn't come up. She's just Cassia. That is behind the scenes information you now have.
Okay. Yes. So I want to say, if it's okay, I can put in here. Now, this book is the book that we are doing the giveaway for today, right? Is Foulest Fair? Okay.
I will be giving away a copy of Foulest Fair, signed, sanitized, and shipped.
Oh, okay. And I want to say then, that being the case, before we move on really quick, for anybody who is watching at home, we'll be doing the drawing at the end. But if you want to be entered to win a copy of the book we just heard an excerpt from, Foul is Fair, then just put into the comment section, put the word enter and whatever your name is, because some of you watching at home from Facebook, I can't actually see your name unless you type it into the comments. So enter and your name, and then I will add you to the wheel of drawing that we will spin at the end of the show. So yes, wheel of names, turn, turn, turn. I mean, spin, spin, spin. Yes. Okay. So book number 2, tell us a little bit about this one that you're going to read from, if you will.
Okay, so this book is the first of a completed trilogy. This was also co-written with Catherine Perkins. This is You're Not a Real Goth Until You Sack Rome. This is mostly based on pretty heavy research Norse Germanic witchcraft mythology instead of fairy
Ooh.
mythology. Going to cheat for a moment and say that while we have numerous pitches for this that we're still working on, the one that has gotten the most attention is the one coming from a meme of describe your book as badly as possible but accurately. Wherein You're Not a Real Goth is the story of a 16-year-old goth and an ancient Italian witch fighting over apple juice.
Okay, wait. This sounds so Snow White-like almost.
So there is a reason for that. So the primary research material that went into Goth, first of all, are pretty much my favorite research material, the prose and poetic Eddas. Huge amounts of Goth are drawn from the Volsung saga, which is the 4th and 5th century proto-Viking story that inspired Tolkien to write Lord of the Rings.
Oh.
So the legend that would become the One Ring, and Varanot, the ring out of that story, appears within the cycle of the stories. And then Jacob Grimm's Mythologies is one of my new favorites. This book gave me an excuse to buy a copy translated from the German, which is essentially, unlike most of the Grimm brothers' work, it is not a novel. It is a giant, compact compendium of Jacob Grimm's research notes that would become the Grimm fairy tales, including
I've heard of this book.
the original Snow White. And book 3 of the series gets very, very heavy into the old Snow White. So
this
Midnight
sounds
or Something.
More and more interesting.
So yes, the 3 books in this series, all of them are bits of history combined with puns on Seattle goth tropes. So book 1 is You're Not a Real Goth Until You Sack Rome. Book 2 is SPF 1066. And book 3 is Midnight or Something Darker.
SPF as in
SPF as in Sun Protection Factor. 1066 as in the Battle of Hastings.
Yes, okay.
So yes, SPF 1066, in which the primary enemy is the second member of the main character, Ray Schwartz's mother's coven, who is a fire witch.
Ooh, I got little shivers right there. So shall we let you get to reading this then? I'm excited to hear, because while I'm familiar with the first series, I am not familiar with this, so I'm like,
okay, yes, we can absolutely get on to the reading, and this one will require a little less preface because I'm starting right from chapter 1.
All right, sir, the floor is yours.
Okay, so pretty much all one needs to know from this is Ray Schwartz is a 16-year-old girl in 1990 Seattle attending high school. She is a bit of an outsider as a perky goth who, it's not that she only has one outfit, she's got 17 identical copies of the same outfit because she's comfortable in it. So her very naturally pale skin, dark hair, black skirt, black hoodie, and her various adorable black and white leggings ranging from Wednesday Addams stripes to skulls to whatever. So she is going into high school and facing a typical situation for her. Chapter 1, People Are Strange. And I will pause right there to say one of the fun parts about these books for the music fiends. All of the chapter titles throughout Goth are song titles mostly of 1970s, 80s, and 90s Goth songs so each book has a playlist that intentionally goes with it. In moments like this one, Ray often thought to herself, what would Morticia Addams do? And unfortunately, the answer was always the same. Not sure, but she'd do it with grace, poise, and style. Probably before it got to this point. Freak, said Becky as she shoved Ray back against the locker. Ray was vaguely glad that her hoodie cushioned that slightly, and kept any rough metallic edges from snagging the black lace of her shirt. Becky was not a cheerleader. Ray couldn't recall the last time a cheerleader had even made eye contact. Becky was instead the sort of person who would want to be a cheerleader, and then be surprised not to make the cut. Few people were quite the same sort of dangerous, Ray figured, as those who'd always gotten everything they ever wanted, and suddenly they didn't. Because those left out of their assumed place in the pecking order then tended to begin proving to themselves and their friends that there were some people they were better than. Ray just tried to keep hold of her books in the process. If she lost them, the notebooks or the sheets of paper contained inside of them, she might never get them back. Or, worse, she'd be hearing some of her poetry being read and snickered over. The upside of her tight grip and reasonably good balance was that she didn't lose anything except the heavy history textbook at the top of the stack. The bullies left that one alone. No one really wanted an extra history textbook, no matter how much it might inconvenience Ray to have to explain where hers went. Of course, that was the other problem with her situation. Becky and all of her friends may not have had the talent to get everything they wanted at school, but their families went to the same country club as 5 school board members and the assistant principal's brother-in-law. Economics wasn't Ray's strongest suit, but some things did trickle down. Things with which nobody below wanted to get wet. Thus, if Ray did try to get her betters in trouble, somehow she'd end up in detention. She might get her books back, maybe, but it was still detention, a missed bus, and a very long walk home. Freak, Becky repeated. Becky was pressed too close for Ray to have any realistic chance to get away. Even if that wasn't the case, all of Becky's little clique of well-dressed, properly manicured friends had circled the area to block any easy view and to keep most others out. Sometimes those nods drew the attention of one of the teachers, at least if they bothered to leave their classrooms. A quick glance didn't reveal any sign of anyone coming to break it up. Becky was the worst of her bunch. The others mostly kept their torments to insults and snide commentary, occasionally moving up to try to steal notebooks or the like, or scattering someone's things enough to make them late for class. Becky, on the other hand, insulted less and pushed more, to make up for some of her lack of creativity. When it came to the battles of wits, Ray was usually all too happy to engage with the little clique of rich girls, and was pretty sure she had them outmatched. Admittedly, she had to grant, that probably helped lead to situations like this one. Most of Ray's associates had taken to the age-old strategy of just taking the insults and trying to pretend like they didn't hear them. Ray's insistence on baiting the lions probably contributed to them letting their immaculately coiffed thug do the talking for them. A moment. It appeared that this was going to happen. Becky wouldn't leave any major marks. If she did, the official answer would be that Ray fell, for convenience. But that didn't mean this would be any fun. Ray also saw no immediate sign of any fishnet gloves or Eye of Horus makeup nearby. Not that she expected her own clique to rally around the way Becky's did. They'd be inching away, glad it wasn't their turn. Except sometimes when it was. And that sucked too. "What's the matter, Spooky? Nothing to say for yourself?" Becky asked, swaying, and ending up hitting the locker next to Ray's head. Just trying to rattle her so far. Get her to flinch, draw a laugh from her friends. A furtive glance past that hand indeed confirmed that Louis, Diana, and the rest were inched back and away, tucked away as best they could be, without actually losing sight of the sadistic little ritual, as if they could just disappear into the wall. She supposed it was probably better that this one was only going to happen to her. It wasn't a surprise either. "Nothing you'd understand," she said. That was probably going to get her hit. If so, it might be worth it from the looks on all of Becky's friends' faces. Pyrrhic victories still had the word victory in them. Becky's face scrunched up and her other hand came back. Ray refused to flinch. There was some noise and jostling to her left, and Becky paused, glancing over as the crowd parted. It wasn't exactly a graceful parting so much as kind of a shoving situation. Ray looked down. So did Becky. Erica Anderson, all 5 feet and 1 inch of her, and an extra inch of light brown faux hawk, glared at Becky. "You want to fight? Stay out of it, midget." "Too late," Erica answered, jostling one of the other prep girls aside a little, just to make it clear she had no intention of being crowded out of the ranks. Ray almost wanted to smile. The memories could work as a movie montage or a set of comic book flashback panels. Erica stepping forward in defiance and a dirty preschooler smock. And in a spare Phantom of the Opera t-shirt Ray gave her back in 4th grade. And now in this tattered t-shirt adorned with the Black Flag logo. The hiking boots were the hand-me-downs now. Penny Little Thunder saved from grade school. Ray could almost picture the movie in her mind going further, seeing Erica in new and scruffier outfits, though she really didn't know what chilly courtyard she was imagining. It would be hard at this point to even daydream of Erica in college. "You that desperate for more detention?" Becky asked. "Maybe you'll get suspended this time." No matter who started the fight, or what Ray or anyone else said, if she got caught fighting, somehow Erica would end up the one in trouble. She practically had her own seat in detention, to the point that she only technically rode the same bus home as Ray. "If I give you a black eye first, worth it," Erica said, not breaking eye contact. Ray was tempted to shrink away, but didn't have many options with Becky and so close. And it seemed wrong to leave her knight in Black Flag armor totally alone. Granted, Ray's presence wasn't precisely useful, but maybe she could be moral support. "You couldn't reach my eye," Becky said. "Can if I take your knee out first," Erica said. Ray held her breath. The last time they'd fought, Erica had messed Becky up a little. But that didn't mean the bigger girl was likely to back down in front of her friends. Becky tensed and turned to face off with Erica. Erica dropped her skateboard and backpack on the floor, hands balling up into fists. "Hey, what's going on?" came the call from down the hall. "Mrs. Teague." Of course she took her time about it. "Mrs. Teague, thank goodness," Becky said, suddenly a lot less aggressive. "Erica is threatening people again." And that was it, how it always played out. Becky would play the victim, the teacher would believe her, and Erica would end up back in detention. Ray glanced apologetically at the smaller girl. Erica caught her eye and shrugged. "Get out of here," she mouthed. "Your aunt would worry." Ray started to slink towards the other Goths. But sometimes rituals, even empty ones, were important. "That isn't how it happened," Ray said. But for all it was noticed, it must magically have been quieter than the sound of Mrs. Teague writing Erica up. Some might say that Erica Diego's daughter Anderson was hard to spell, but not in this school, with all the practice they had. Erica took the slip serenely. The knight errant of the freaks would return to her ancestral seat that afternoon. No one was waiting up for her. Erica's father was in jail after all. Her mother was, as Aunt Elise would say with her usual awkwardness in the face of negativity, overwhelmed. Between 2 jobs and the family's array of problems, at least the Andersons knew what their own problems were, and generally where the other Andersons were. Ray wondered, if her own parents had managed to get off whatever it was they were addicted to and raise her themselves right here in Seattle, would they, too, have joined the same country club as all the right little insect authorities? Would Ray be able to protect or sabotage people at her convenience? Then she remembered that her parents had thought Perdita Raven Schwartz looked good on a birth certificate. She recalled the hazy toddler's eye view images of flowing hair, stretched velvet, and exquisitely manicured nails, all of them jet black. If her parents had kept it together, they'd probably have been just like her. A comforting thought, and also useless. This was a fitting feeling as she watched Erica walk away. So there is that from You're Not a Real Goth to USAC Rome.
That sounds very goth, to be perfectly honest. The last couple lines of that chapter, right? A comforting feeling and useless. Very.
Yeah.
The characters come off as quite practical on the goth side. Yeah,
Ray has practicality along with being, so she is a very, very, so her heroes are or her own little set of patron saints that get mentioned over and over are Morticia Addams, as mentioned right off the bat, right. Robert Smith of The Cure, and the lead of Concrete Blonde. Ray is very into her perky gothness, likes her goth with a little bit of spooky and kooky.
So between your two book series, and I do have a couple of questions here, but between your two book series, which one do you personally identify with more, the Fae or the Goth?
So,
and by Goth I mean Goth and Viking Goth.
Sure. So out of all of those, probably the most with the Viking Goth side. So the reason I really super got into reading, so I was a super early reader with my parents kind of figuring out between Sesame Street and practice. I was reading when I was reading Wonder Woman comics to my little sister. And one of our big rewards when we moved to Seattle were trips to a comic book store and, figuring they'd read them to us. And I pretty much had loaded up on all things Wonder Woman and Thor. And it didn't take long to kind of get to the, both of those are based on real things. So I kind of started tearing through mythology, and Thor comics and myth were one of my first big loves. So it's not an accident I get into the Eddas, the Volsung Saga, stuff like that. Right. Number two would be the Fae. I'm a huge mythology nut and love fairies. I was never myself a goth, but I worked as a bouncer in the 90s and worked a lot of goth shows. So I was around musicians and goth culture all the time. And book two of Fairfolk in particular, Street Fair, is sort of Kate and my mutual love letter to the music industry.
So this actually leads to one of the questions that I wanted to ask, having gone, I think I'm probably about halfway through that book now. And there is, but in both books, in the first book and in what I've read of the second book, so you have, and you mentioned this just earlier too, you have so many musical references to the way songs sound, the notes, the keys that they're in, the way that you describe the instruments being played. And you even include lyrics in your book where the characters are singing the lyrics or listening to lyrics. Yep. And of course, being a book, there is no actual music that you're hearing come out of the pages, but I am dying to know, are there songs that you have in mind or that you base this part of the writing off of? Are you describing an actual song and maybe just kind of making your own words to it for the story? And if so, what is that music? You said there was playlists that go with your stories. What are those? Where can they be found?
Okay, so for Fairfolk, one of the first things I did was assembled a 249 song playlist on a music streaming service that no longer exists. but was the music I was listening to constantly throughout the writing. The books have tons of references to very real music. I listened to like one of the most blatant examples is Better Than Ezra's Good, which I don't know if you're at the point yet where that song is referenced in Street Fair or not, but is a really important one.
The point that I'm at is basically everything goes crazy at the Goblin Market.
Okay.
That is my next chapter. The Crowd Goes Wild is the next chapter that I have to read. So
you are not quite there yet, but you will see it blatantly when it comes up and why that song is important. But so most of the actual songs within it are not based on real songs per se, but they are definitely based on multiple musical influences. Like the two big bands that come up over and over in Fairfolk. There is Late to the Party,
yes,
which is Sheila O'Reilly, Rhea Card. So basically, they're late to the party because they were formed after Kurt Cobain's suicide and the big rush of bands. So they missed the big rush of garage bands, but they were So and Late to the Party is very, very intelligent grunge. They love playing with the music and having fun with all of it. Like they're the song that, if I could have one song created, written, and recorded from this, it would be yet another song about jumping, which is Late to the Party, doing a relatively complex but danceable song, making fun of all of the songs in the 80s and 90s entitled Jump and Dance and Bounce.
And Jump Around and
Exactly. So it is a relatively lyrically complex song of them having fun, making good-natured fun of empty pop that you can dance to. And while I have no release time or information or anything else, I do know a couple of local musicians who may be playing around with a music-related project for Fairfolk. I shouldn't go too much into that or spoil it or name names, but I am working on it because it's been a passion project for a long time.
I think it sounds amazing to have a soundtrack for your book. I think that sounds great.
And so the soundtrack that I can talk about more openly. So if you, anybody who has a copy, were to pick up a copy of You're Not a Real Goth to Usac Rome and look at the table of contents page. So the chapter titles: People Are Strange, Little Conversations, Be Our Guest, Dead Man's Party, Entre Aves Lo Compresta, Darkness, A Whole New World, Where Is My Mind, Dead Souls, and the list goes on and on. All of the chapter titles are song titles. So as we were writing the book and figuring out the chapter titles, we put these and a bunch of the songs that would eventually end up not taken as chapter titles, made playlists out of them, and we're sort of listening to them as we wrote the book. And each of the chapters, so all of the chapters that are very Ray-centric, which is a little more than 2/3 of them, are goth songs. All of the Erica heavy chapters are punk songs. All of the Henrietta Sunshine Little Thunder chapters are Disney songs. And one or two chapters in each book tied to the gargoyle, Sandy, are old Latin songs. So they're kind of a pre-introduction to this chapter is about this character. And all three of the books follow, so between the three books, there's 90 songs on a playlist.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot. So I love how you have this secret dual layer, though, that the actual names of the chapters are in fact relative to kind of inspiration for writing those chapters. I think that is fun and clever. So,
well, and it was also era immersive because all of the songs were written in 1996 or before, so all songs suitable to the era, nothing modern. So
for the yes,
yep, because yeah,
and easy to find. So that is pretty cool.
Yes.
Okay, and so one of the, it was more like a comment that I'm extracting from what I saw go by in the feed, but there was something about being in the book. Somebody mentioned that they wanted to be in a book too. And so that made me wonder, is there actually a way that people can have cameos in your books? Is that something you do regularly? Was it just a one-off?
So that is something that I almost never do. The primary ways that people are in the books is identifying with characters so strongly that they decide to try and cosplay them. And I love our cosplayers, the people who help to make our cosplay calendar, the people who are working now as models for an upcoming project that will be on the book covers. So there's a lot of that, but there is one and only one time I have ever made a really major alteration to a character in order to have them shape a little closer to somebody in the real world. And I happen to have that book right here. So this is Unchosen. This is a little bit darker story, but also mythology based, Norse, Haitian, Japanese, and some world folklore bits. And one of the characters, well, not based on a person, an aspect of the character was rewritten specifically so that Jareth the Goblin King would have a character with a breathing mask built in, so that he could cosplay it as one of my first super fans and somebody who has done great favors, such as delivering sherry right to our table. So that is not, bringing in real people is not something we normally do, but that was a gigantic exception, well deserved.
That is awesome and also answers that question. And so,
and can I step aside for about 30 seconds while you talk about your stuff? I need to.
Yeah.
I will be right back, and I will be happy to take more.
Okay, no problem. So with regards to the book that we actually just heard an excerpt from, there is also not currently, but beginning in May, going to be a giveaway for that book for, I believe Jeffrey called it the Fussy Librarian promotion. And for 1 week in the first week of May, you can go to his Amazon and just download that book on Kindle for free, the You're Not Goth Until You Sack Rome. You can find a link to that in the low bar now. And so if you were to click it, you can then follow the author and also just make sure you bookmark it or whatever, so that, I mean, we're not that far away from, oh my gosh, we're not that far away from May. Yeah, so there is that. And then I also want to say, again, we are doing a giveaway here. I'm just going to wait till he comes back before I spin the wheel. So if you want to get in on the giveaway, either ebook or physical copy, it is your choice. For Foul is Fair, just put your name into the comments section and I will add you to the wheel. If you are one of our Patreon patronage, then you will automatically be entered into this and will have a second entry if you put your name into the comments at this time. So just type that in there and let me know that you want to be entered, and I will get you on the wheel that I am about to spin. I see that Jeffrey has come back. So this is my timer. This is the official timer. So Jeffrey, I'm gonna just put this back with you here. So
wonderful. I apologize.
No, it's all good. So this is my timer, and I'm just turning this. Can you just elaborate before I move on to the drawing, and while I give this timer time to run, people time to put their name into the comments, what is the Fussy Librarian exactly?
Okay, so the Fussy Librarian is one of a number of book promotion sites. They have a regular service where authors can promote free or discounted books for a short period. And coming up on the first weekend of May, You're Not a Real Goth to USAC Rome will be free on ebook and being promoted by Fussy Librarian. So that entire weekend, if you log into my Amazon page, you can get the ebook for free.
Just the weekend. Correction on my part. I said the whole week. My bad. Just the weekend.
It will probably be like Friday that we first set it to free.
Okay, that sounds fun and awesome. So even though I would love to go take advantage of that, I actually just if I can do the actual real books instead of the ebooks, then that is what I do. So okay. Oh, I see an entry. Let's see. I see an entry from Stormy, and I'm going to get these onto our list. Okay, Stormy. And is there any last minute entries? Okay, the timer is now done. So I am going to share screens here over to the wheel. Yes, the wheel names. Spin, spin, spin.
And answering Seven Realms.
Did I miss a question?
Yeah, so is there a link? So if you Google Fussy Librarian, it'll be the first thing that comes up. They are a promotion site. So you can go through there and sign up for their mailing list, or first weekend of May, you can just sign into the Amazon page for You're Not a Real Goth, and it'll be free that entire weekend for whoever signs on. So,
all right, here we have the wheel. Can you? Has the wheel appeared for you? I see it there.
I see
it. Perfect. And now you shall spin. This is for winning one copy of Foul is Fair, which is the first book that we heard Jeffrey Cook read from this afternoon. It is an urban fantasy fairy tale set here in the Emerald City, that is Seattle. Oh, the Music Box Fairy. Yay! I think that she will find some. Whew, always so loud with the horn. Yes, the Music Box Fairy is actually the lovely, beautiful fairy that does our music at Fairy Blossom Festival each year.
Awesome.
Yes, so I think that she will be thrilled to find out that she has won that. And for all I know, she's out there watching right now. But most likely she is off into the human realm doing work. That is a thing that she is always doing. So that brings us basically to about is to hop over to our server, which is The Hedge on Discord. And a link for that is in the description /lowbar. And feel free to come on over and join us. We will be gathering in the 6 Foot Stubby Hole channel. And Jeffrey is going to be us, and we'll be talking. Actually, Jeffrey, I'm going to let you tell us what you're going to talk about.
So when the princess reached out, she was saying that they want to kind of do unique little things for these and asked if there was perhaps a passage that didn't make it into the books. And I offered a different suggestion and talking about how a character evolved. And the original version, I was thinking before Catherine intervened for the better, as she often has. So talking about how a character evolved over discussions and what the original version was.
Okay, yes. Oh, thank you for sharing that, Gunther. Yes, so that is the link actually that Gunther has now posted into the chat. Man, I need to go give you the wrench on the YouTubes. That way you can post all of the things. So yes, so anyway, we shall bid you all adieu here on the YouTubes, and we are now going to hop over to Discord where we get to hear about a character alteration from Jeffrey himself. And Jeffrey, do you have any last words?
Thank you all for coming and interacting. Hopefully some of you found some new reads, and it was a pleasure. I will look forward to possibly doing this again sometime and talk to you on Discord.
I would love to have you back on, of course.
Anytime.
All right. We shall see you all anon on Sunday. We are having our next episode of Handmade Home Shopping, so please tune in to see vendors and merchants from across the United States, or as we like to call it, the New World. And please tune in to see them. You can shop with them and, of course, use their magic words to get your special bonuses if you choose to order. And that is it. And goodbye, everybody. We'll see you on Discord.